Hello, everyone. Welcome to our mock class today. My name is Kate Deering. I am a coordinator for recruitment and admissions here at Geese Business, and I look forward to spending the next hour or so with you. Our time today will be spent providing you with an opportunity to really understand how our live lectures are delivered in the three online degree programs that Geese offers: the IMBA, the IMSA, and the IMSM program. These three graduate level programs are innovative, they're affordable, and they're designed to be specifically online to offer a real flexibility and access for full-time working professionals. Today, you will experience just one part of the high engagement content that Geese offers, the live class. There are many other facets to learning with Geese, like the Coursera foundational material, there's group projects, there's lots of networking, and just being part of a great university like Illinois. Since we don't have time today to chat about the programs, I am going to share our email address and this QR code if you'd like to speak with me or an admissions counselor to really just discuss your goals and whether or not this program is right for you. I would really love to connect with you. You just have to scan that QR code and fill out a short form, and we will reach out to you. Before we get started learning about project management and risk planning today, I did want to cover a few housekeeping items. I see some of you have your cameras turned on, which is great. Thank you. I encourage all of you to turn your camera on so we can see your faces here today. Please note that you are all muted to minimize background noise during this class. There may be moments when Professor Taghaboni-Dutta invites you to participate, and then our technical team will unmute your microphone for you. If you have questions, please use the raise hand feature and we will call on you. We will also have a breakout session today, which will allow you to really participate in your, in the live class with your fellow session attendees. Lastly, we invite you to feel comfortable participating in the chat. There's usually lots of chatter in our live classes, and I will also be monitoring the chat, and I will be happy to answer any questions there as well. So let's move on to our live class. I'm super excited. Our instructor for today's class is Professor Fataneh Taghaboni-Dutta. She is a clinical associate professor of business administration, a position that she has held since 2009. Her teaching interests lie in operations and process management, including product development and design, operation and technology strategy, and project management, where she is also a certified project management professional, or PMP. She focuses her research on integration of technology with management and on process improvement. Her current research priority is the development and deployment of radio frequency identification technology in manufacturing and global supply chain. Professor Taghaboni-Dutta has earned 3 degrees in industrial engineering from Purdue University, a BS in 1983, an MS in 1986, and a PhD in 1989. She currently teaches BADM 377, which is project management, BADM 572, statistics, and BIDM 589, project management in the IMBA and the IMSM programs here at Geese. Please join me in welcoming Professor Fataneh Taghaboni-Dutta.
Thank you, Kate. Well, welcome to everyone, even Ryan at 3 a.m. in Singapore. And I hope that you guys get a good sense of what our classes are about. I have been part of our online program since 2016 when it was launched. And I won't tell you that I went into it willingly. I've been kicking and screaming, and now I love it. I thought that I would not get to know my students. Teaching is one of my deepest passion, and I thought if I'm not in a classroom, I won't connect with my students, but these online programs have proven to be otherwise. There is a lot of opportunities for me to connect with the students in this program, even though, as you can see in the chat, they come from all over, some from very nearby Champaign, but some very far, far away. And it's just been a very, very good experience, and has proven to be just as intimate as my classrooms have been, and sometimes more. So today I'm going to give you a sense of what happens during our live sessions. Every course has a live session, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but the sessions are similar. The students can drop into these sessions so they can be in a classroom together, in a virtual classroom together. And this is going to be one of those, emulating one of those. And I don't know why they didn't ask me to do my stat class, because that's also an awesome thing. But we're going to stick to project management, and hopefully you will get something out of this. I am going to talk about risk management. Okay, so so what I'm going to give you is, first of all, an overview of what I'm going to do, and talk about what we call risk, especially in the context of project management, and how professional project managers define risk, and what do they do to plan for it, and how we would plan it. So that's just basically what I am going to be following as an agenda in the class. But as Kate mentioned to you guys, if you have a question, please raise your hand. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat. And Kate is looking at that. And if there's something that is, that should be something that I discuss with the whole class, I would be more than happy to do so. So before I get excited, before I get it started, if there's something you want to see, you can put it in the chat, and I will browse back and forth and see if I can include it, even if it's not part of my plan. So let me first of all start by creating an understanding of what we mean by risk in the world of project management. Okay, so risk is basically anything that's uncertain that can impact your project objectives. And there are three things in project management that are paramount. One is to stay within your budget and finish on time and deliver everything that you promise your customer, which is what we will call the scope of the project. So these are the three things that we want to deliver on. And obviously project management is not easy. Projects, by some estimates, 2 out of 3 projects fail in one of these three things or more. So either they're not on time or on budget, or they don't deliver everything they have said, or combination of the above. So that's a pretty bad track record. And one of the reasons for this to happen is because projects are difficult. They require project managers have to be very good at handling people, that is your team, your sponsors, your customers, general public, sometimes if your project has some implications on general public. And then also you have to be able to manage budget, manage time, be organized. So you have to be a left brain and a right brain at the same time. So it's not something easy we can automate. It is, we have software systems that can help, but they really don't solve many of the problems that we have to solve on our own. So because of that, obviously understanding how to do this and what are all the moving parts that you have to get working together in order to deliver on time, on budget, and on scope becomes a really important part. So I'm just going to focus on the risk here. And why? Because risks will happen. Okay, if we have learned something from the last 2 years, is that we have no control over much of anything. The pandemic has upended everything for all of us, right? And we have to make adjustments for that, for everything. So risk will certainly occur no matter what you do. So we will talk about how we will plan for risk in a little while, but I want to first of all still go on by introducing to that risks can also have positive impact. So when we define risk, we define it as an event that can have an impact on the project, but the event can have a positive impact on the project or a negative impact. Now, majority of today, I am going to focus on the negative because most of us have a lot of negative issues that we have to deal with. But I don't want you to think that positives don't happen. And if it happens, it's positive. Why do I need to plan for it? We still need to plan for it. So let me give you a moment to think about it. And if you think about it, raise your hand and I want to hear it. Can you think about any good risks, any events that for any given industry, like where you work, something good can happen that you can take advantage of? But you're not sure 100% it can happen, but there's a chance for it to happen. Can you guys think of anything? Anyone? Sarah?
Yeah, I work at a logistics company, and the fact that there's a shortage of truck drivers right now has been advantageous for us.
Why?
Because when capacity is low, there's increased competition for that capacity. And if we can broker arrangements and get trucks on the road, helps us out.
Okay, so you should qualify that by if we broker an arrangement. So just because of this, so this is, I'm sorry, I know there's more hand up, but I will try to rotate through the hands. If I want to say is that if we have to go, so pandemic, so this is what Sarah also has experienced, is probably a byproduct of pandemic, is that it has been a source of new opportunity for some organizations, okay? And what I want you to understand is that just because it exists doesn't mean that it's going to be beneficial. So let me give you a couple of examples. One is what FedEx had come up with. So FedEx came up with something known as a cold chain transportation. Cold chain transportation are basically these trucks that maintain a certain temperature, the entire truck, and you can monitor the truck. So that's a very useful thing. So if I'm sending an entire grocery store frozen food or the cold inventory in a truck, that's perfectly fine. So very shortly before pandemic, they extended this technology and they came up with something known as a sense-aware ID. Now, sense-aware IDs are these small plastic sensors that I can put into a box, and that box can maintain a temperature, and then sense-aware ID can make sure that that box is transporting at that temperature. So it's not the entire truck, just the box. Now, why was this a good risk for FedEx? Because Moderna and Pfizer, shortly after that, came up with the vaccines that required to be at an exact low temperature. So it was very important that when Pfizer and Moderna were shipping their vaccines to different areas to be distributed to the public, the vaccine had to be kept at a certain temperature. Now, this is a great opportunity for FedEx. It could make it the carrier of choice for the federal government. However, that would be if they could produce enough of these sensor IDs to distinguish themselves from UPS or USPS. Because if they only have a few, they can only do 100,000 boxes, but we need 300 million of these to be sent all across the country. That's not an opportunity that you can take advantage of. So sometimes something good happens. There is an opportunity for you to get the benefits of that. But if you haven't planned for it, if you don't have the capacity to accommodate it, that good does not come into you either. So you have to plan for the good as much as you plan for the bad. But as I said, I'm going to focus on the bad. And so what is a bad risk and why plan for it? Well, you know what a bad risk is. Bad risk is the one that gives you a setback. It's gonna cost you more money, take you more time, and you're not gonna be able to provide the quality that you were planning for. So why plan for it? Because by being proactive rather than reactive, we reduce the surprises and negative consequences, obviously, and we can have better control over our future. So if we have planned for it, we are ready for it. And this will improve my chances of reaching my goals at least more economically and more quickly. And I also can explain it to my customers much sooner rather than later. So planning will have, being proactive has all the benefits that it has in every aspect of our lives. So what are the sources of risk? Now, here's the thing, bad risks come across from many different places, right? They can come from unexpected events, hurricanes and wars and pandemic are some of the things that we can think of, but so is labor unions going on strike and shortage of certain supplies. All of these are unexpected events. There's something else in project management that we refer to as mission creep. And that's when the customers are constantly asking for more or different than what you started with. So your project is morphing to something new, but they're not giving you any extra time or money to accomplish it. Now, that's a topic for another session. I'm not going to get into it, but that's also a source. And then there's time slippage problem. I need something, and Amanda was supposed to do her work first, and then I would get it from Amanda and get it, but Amanda has fallen behind, so now I'm behind, and next Abhishek has to take something from me, and now he's behind, so it just goes rippling effect of time is slipping away. And then, of course, we all know this one. People don't do, they have attitude problems, let's say, right? There would be people problems, there's dysfunctionality, and so on. So there are many, many, many sources of what we would call bad risks, the things that would set us back. Now, let me ask you about this. How many of you, and if you remember, raise your hand, Amazon Fire Phone, and how many of you owned it? No one? Not a single hand? Seriously. Well, okay, Felipe, you remember it?
I do remember it. I never owned one of them, but I do remember.
Well, you're not alone. You're not alone. You're in good company if you never owned one. The reason I show you this is because, as you know, Steve Jobs used to have this unveiling activity that here Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, is emulating. And Amazon is known for being a very, very good company that does many good things, but they're not immune to bad risks either. So in 2014, they introduced it, this phone. They pulled it off market in 2015. So it had a very short life. They offered it at $199. You had to have a contract with AT&T specifically, and it wasn't selling. And at that time, $199 was a bargain, and it wasn't selling. So they dropped it immediately to 99 cents, and then would give you a free membership in Prime. So it basically was a negative cost, right? Because membership in Prime is not free. And it didn't go well. So why did it fail? They basically killed the project almost within a year. So it was 13 months. First of all, it was limited service only with AT&T. And this was prior to the fact that you could move your number. So if you were Verizon and T-Mobile or whatever else that was at that time, you were unlikely to change if you had to tell all your contacts that this is my new number. So there was a barrier to entry right there. But then it also did things that were just unbelievably bad. This is the time that Bluetooth was well understood and used everywhere. So they released a product late to the market that was not fully developed by the standards that we were used to. Why would you take it? It didn't have Bluetooth, it had underdeveloped OS. So basically, even if you gave it away for free, people were not willing to take it. It was good for toddlers to use as toys, but nothing else. So this is an example of a bad fail. And sometimes if Jeff Bezos was paying attention or his project managers were paying attention, they would have said, let's not introduce it and not give Fataneh an example she would use for eternity. But many times what happens in projects is that when we realize that we are in really, really trouble, we think about the sunk cost and we are not willing to give up something bad. So it's not any better that you released it and you did all this marketing and added to that cost and still didn't get anywhere. So sometimes bad risks can become you become so engrossed in it that you can't get yourself out of it. And there's an example of this. And by the way, across the industry, you will find examples of this. So no one is immune to it, and you're never going to have enough risk planning. So here's the example I wanted to give you. So then the question is, so how do we plan for it? And the goal here is to at least make an attempt to recognize the potential issues that can come up, okay, when the project's implemented. So one of the things that we want to do is that, first of all, think about the risk events. What can go wrong? And then think about what are the consequences of their impact if it happens, okay? And somehow think about, is there a way I can change that consequence? And what can we do before an event occurs? So can I see that it's coming? So for example, if there is a difference between a hurricane and an earthquake, right? Hurricane, I can tell it's coming. I can do some things about it. Earthquake, I still don't have any way of knowing that it's going to happen in the next hour, right? So different risks, if you can anticipate the risk, if there are some telltale signs that is coming, you can start thinking about how you're going to manage it. So that makes it a little easier in terms of risk versus something that you can't see or tell that is coming. And then having a contingency plan. So these are the things that we want to do. We want to talk about how do we talk, what can, how things can be organized, what can go wrong, what is its impact, can I tell it's coming, and then if it happens, what do I do? What is my contingency plan? Believe it or not, one of the biggest thing is for project managers is to make sure that the team talks about risks. So one of the things that will happen is that if people start talking about risk, oftentimes, not always, but sometimes, either the project manager or other members of the team will start to roll their eyes or just say, hey, you're always like this. You always tell me the bad news, right? So what happens is that people tend to keep it quiet if they feel like they're being judged by bringing up risk. So one of the biggest tasks a project manager has is to actually say, let me hear it. Just because I don't hear it, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So make it easy for people to talk. So that becomes, we have techniques that we learn in my class, in my real class, that we focus on how do we do this? How do we get people talking? But also remember this, when people start talking, discussion can go all over the place. Like if Kate tells me this can happen, I can say, oh my God, that doesn't happen that often. And I'm already going into this probability of happening and all of those other things. We want to be very systematic about these things. Just tell me what can happen. We will analyze it later. So typically what good project managers will do is that they have a lot of these sticky notes available for their teammates and say, hey, write down as much as you can. And we're going to put it on the board and then we'll have a discussion later on. But you want to open up the Pandora's box and you want to hear about everything that can affect you negatively. But we're going to do more. So we want to increase everyone's participation because the more we know, the better off we are. And then we're going to look at the uncertainties that are being given to me, the risks. Is there something I can do to either eliminate it or change its impact? So I'll give you a very simple example. It might be that you want to have an outdoor wedding in October in Champaign, Illinois. When the weather is nice, it's a lovely time of the year, right? But those of you who are from Illinois know that it's a sort of a crapshoot. It could be a lovely day, or it could be raining a lot, or it could be cold. You can't tell which day is going to be. So, but I am dead set on having an outdoor wedding, right? So one of the things I can do is say, why not do it somewhere that is a little bit more reliable? Let's do it in Arizona, right? It's not going to rain in October. That's one option. So what have I done? I completely removed the chances of rain, or at least very unlikely that October you will have rain in Arizona somewhere. Or I can say, okay, you really want your wedding outside? I'm going to also call up a contractor and have a deposit on a tent should be needed. And if it's a rainy day, they will deliver it to the site and we will use it. So we're thinking ahead of time in terms of if this risk were to happen, how do I reduce its likelihood? So by moving to Arizona, I have reduced its likelihood, or its impact by getting somebody giving me a tent, the impact of it is a lot less. So for every risk, we can go through this. Every risk that's worth doing this for. So let me give you an example. This is from Boeing that I'm going to show you. So let me first give you a little bit of starter. So back in, I don't remember when it was now, maybe 10 years ago, when they started putting Wi-Fi's in the plane, it was very important that if I'm going to pay for Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi will work, right? So if I'm paying $19 in my flight to access the Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi is patchy and it doesn't work, next time around, I'm not going to pay for it. It's not going to be worth it. So it was very important for them to, when they were installing the Wi-Fi's in the plane, that it would be a reliable system. And as it turns out, because airplane is made of metal and people are made of liquid, both of these components interfere with signals quite a bit. So it's a very unstable environment. On the other hand, you can't just get up on your seat and move around in the plane to get a better reception because you'll be locked down. So that option is also not viable. So let me show you what Boeing did once they recognized this, this potential.
We live in a world that increasingly expects connections. To improve the flying experience for commercial passengers, the trick would be connecting expectations with state-of-the-art equipment and cutting-edge science.
So the challenge for us at Boeing is providing connectivity at 35,000 feet going 500 miles an hour.
That challenge was not easy. Initially, confirming that the lab method could apply to a large airplane would require time, advanced statistical work, and sacks of potatoes. The vegetable's interactions with radio wave signals mimic those of the human body, the perfect stand-in for people who would otherwise have had to sit, motionless, for days on end while data was gathered.
The name of the project was SPUD, Synthetic Personnel Using Dielectric Substitution.
With state-of-the-art equipment, statistical calculations pushing the envelope of signal testing, and an ancient food staple, the testing was validated. And a proprietary process replaced testing that had once taken 2 weeks to complete. It could now be done in hours.
Behind me is a 12-inch by 12-inch square grid of data that we've collected. And as you can see, the hot spots and cold spots.
The so-called hot and cold spots are actually strong and weak areas of a Wi-Fi signal that is similar to what you might use at home or work.
You want your laptop to work anywhere it's located on your seat rest. So as you can see from this, there'd be significant signal changes just due to the locations of the laptop.
The new method bolsters both passenger connectivity and safe interaction with the critical communication and navigation systems on the airplane.
From an area like this seat right here, somebody fires up a laptop, and there are systems all located throughout the airplane on the interior that are just right inside of these ceiling panels or inside of these side panels here.
From a safety standpoint, you want to know what the peak signals are. What is the strongest signal that one of our communications and navigation systems might see from a laptop or 150 laptops or 300 laptops. So inside the aircraft, it's a very complex electromagnetic environment, and some seats might have very strong signal and some seats might have very, very weak signal. The systems engineers who are installing the system want to know what's the weakest signal we're going to see on the airplane. Am I going to have enough signal at the back of the airplane or up in the front in the cockpit for these systems to operate as designed?
The older testing method could not accurately account for strong and weak spots in a Wi-Fi signal, particularly in an ever-changing cabin environment.
These systems will be tolerant to that change in the electromagnetic environment and provide continuous, uninterrupted service to our passengers.
A connection forged in Boeing laboratories can now be experienced in the palm of your hand.
So here's a good example of where the engineers decided that this would be a huge impact on the project if we don't have good connectivity, and came up with a very brilliant idea which reduced the time for their testing and gave them something proprietary that is a new outcome of this project in order to test the Wi-Fi signals before the airplanes were put into use and you and I signed on for the Wi-Fi system. So this is a good example of how a project manager can identify a risk, find the ways by which they understand the risk, and then manage it. So that's what we want to do as many times as possible. So we are going through this process. I'm going to take you through identifying. So talk about as many risks as you can, then we go through an assessment part of it, and then we go through a development of the response. So risk assessment is getting people to talk. And as I said, here you have to encourage people to be as frank as possible. The more you know, the better off you are. But you have to make sure that you're controlling the discussions. That is only about tell me what are the risks. Don't tell me how likely it is yet. Don't tell me how hard it is. Don't tell me how easy it would be to deal with it. Just tell me what the risks are. So the idea is articulating risk. One of the things that we don't want people to do is to say, well, that will never work. That's not articulating risk. That's just giving me something that I can't use for anything. You have to ask people who says that will never work. You should be able to have them articulate Why wouldn't it work? So you can get into the root cause of what they are seeing in their head. So this takes a little bit of practice. Good project managers will learn to be good facilitators of this discussion so that we can get out the technical, anything else that can happen that is going to affect our project in a negative way, so then we can assess it. So for that, we're going to soon go into a breakout room so you guys can practice this. So let's say I always go back to my training through HGTV and talk about home building. But I know that most of us don't know how to build a home, but we have lived in a home, so that's a good thing. So you've been hired by a customer to build their dream home. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. You operate the general contractor in Champaign, Illinois, and you subcontract your work to trade professionals, okay, to plumber and electricians and carpenters and so on. And right now, housing construction in Champaign is booming. So you have promised your final cost somewhere between $450 or $500 and 5 months to complete this house once you start the process, the groundbreaking has done. Now, your customers have told you that they're willing to delay the project in order to save costs. So they are telling you that the cost matters to them more than time. So keep that in mind. So here's my objective: construct a high quality custom home within 5 months at a cost not to exceed $500,000. Every good project should have a SMART objective, and this is a SMART objective. And what is my deliverable? A 2,500, 2.5 bath, 3-bedroom finished home, which has a finished garage. It has kitchen appliances included and a high efficiency gas furnace and a programmable thermostat. This is just some of the things that I have included, and that's what we're going to deliver. So you're the project manager, and you're going to be in with your team. Whoever goes with you to the breakout room is your team member. And what I want you to do is the following. I want you, I'm going to give you a Google sheet to work on. So the link is right now in the chat. So please either copy it or open it, but wait a second for me so I can also show you what I want to show you. And when you click on that link, it will take you to, let me do a new share, to this page. Okay, this is just the project. This is just the objectives that I just read to you. And what you see down here are different tabs. So soon you'll be breaking into different breakout rooms. So what I want you to do is please pay attention to the breakout room that you're assigned. So if you're in room 3, you should click on tab 3 to work with your group and write down what your risks are. So you can write your risks right here. Okay, I'm not going to write it because this belongs to a room. And of course, there are more rooms here. If you just click, you'll find more. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you some time to work on this, and then we'll come back and discuss it on the other end. So please go ahead and start the breakout room. Okay, welcome back. I hope you got the chance to meet some of the people who may be potentially with you in the program in the next cohort. So let me ask you again, raise your hand if I can call, I probably will not call on all of you, but I will call on some of you to tell me what was one of the risks that your group came up with. Matthew, what did your group came up with? Just give me one so I can give a chance to other people too.
Sure. So, hi everyone. So there was a couple of risks, but one of the risks I think that tracks close to real life right now is the increase of the cost of materials.
Increase of cost, yes, obviously. That is very much in everyone's mind. Felipe, give me one of the risks.
Yeah, labor shortages.
Labor shortages, again, something that rings true today very much. Phil, what about your team?
We had discussed if there was, because there's a surplus of work going on permitting in that department, maybe getting approvals to proceed with construction.
So permit, okay, very good. Melba.
We talked about the weather and the impact of weather.
Yep, because you'll be having outside. Very good. Craig?
We discussed soil assessments, the soil that your house would be built on.
Okay. Anurag?
Yeah, we've covered most of the things that people have already said, but one thing that came up in the discussion were like changing customer expectations over the course of the project.
Getting what? I'm sorry?
Changing customer expectations over the project.
Customer expectation. Okay, thank you. I think I heard transportation, but yeah, that happens a lot. Louisa.
Hi, everyone. So we talked about issues associated with the supply chain issues when promising appliances and kind of acquiring those.
Okay. And Mohan, last one.
The same thing that Louisa mentioned, the supply chain delays.
Okay, so
and
go ahead.
And also you talked about conflict with getting the subcontractors. It's basically the resource not coming up in time.
And I'm not sure how many of you in the home construction. I certainly am not. I am sure somebody who does this for a living can think of more than what we have talked about, but these are all real risks. So what I want you to know is that the first step is exactly what we just did. Not getting into, is it likely or is it not likely, or this will really put me back. Like, I don't know if my customers' expectations will change or not, but it's a risk, right? You're gonna just say it. So the first step is just putting out the list. And as I said, one of the best things that project managers can do is to help their team members to feel safe to voice this. Because the more you know, the more prepared you can be. You can never be 100% prepared. You're just trying to improve your chances. So again, post-it note is what I would recommend for everyone to have plenty of when they run a project. The next step is, okay, not all risks are not created equal. Not all risks will impact us in the same way. So the next step after identifying is what we would call assessment. What are the chances of this happening? Some things are more likely than the others. So again, today we are in an environment that we all are experiencing increased cost of material as well as the labor shortage. So right now, that is a highly likelihood to occur if I'm going to break ground next month. 2 years from today or 2 years back, that might have been not less likely. So we want to talk about, based on our own knowledge, maybe sometimes we have to do research. Remember, when the Boeing engineers are talking about loss of signal, that's based on statistical analysis. They're talking about what is the impact, they're talking about the likelihood. So different ways of talking about what are the likelihood of this happening. And then what would be the severity of this if it happens? Now, if my customer talked about cost is important to them, so risks that will impact my cost would be important because they don't want to pay more than what they're supposed to, or they cannot afford paying more than they were supposed to. And the last part is that difficulty of detection. Will I know it's coming or not? So again, the question of whether, so if I were in Champaign, there is no chance of hurricane. But if you are, I'm sorry, no, there are no chances of hurricanes so far, but there's also no chances of earthquakes. But you could be part of the country where you could have firestorm and you can have really bad rain and flooding as well as earthquake. I will not name it, but it's somewhere in California. So all of these, but so it's harder to detect some of them than the others. So all of these will become important. Why? Because I can take for each risk and then create a risk value by combining how impactful that risk is, how likely that risk is, and how difficult that risk is to detect ahead of time. And that would give me a risk value. Why is this important? Is because if I get hundreds of risks identified, we know that we have to prioritize. You know that in your life, every day in your life, when you manage your daily life, you prioritize what is the most important thing to keep an eye on. Same thing with the risk. So what we will do is, for example, if I say weather delays, which is something, so this is, I had put up, and it kind of looks similar to some of the things that you guys said, and I have some extra ones. So if I say, well, weather delay, the likelihood of bad weather in Champaign, and I'm going to use a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, you can use whatever scale you want. But if I use a scale of 1 to 10, I give it a 6. Its impact is a 3 in terms of delay. How easy is it to detect or not detect? So the lower this number is, the better off I am. So not high numbers are hard to detect. So it's a 2. So it has a risk value of 36. So increase of cost of material, in this day and age, this could be the likelihood of this happening is an 8. And its impact is an 8. Why? Because it's going to impact my bottom line. And the customer already has said that they do not want to pay more, right? So I can call the cost impact a much heavier disruption to my delivery of my project on time. How easy is it to detect? I don't know, I'm just gonna make up a number, but then you would just multiply these 3 and you would get a new number, right? So what this will do is that it will give me a chance to prioritize which one of these risks requires a lot of hands-on action to control, and some of those I may be less hands-on. And what it does is that it creates this bucket. We call this prioritizing the risk. We create a bucket of 3 things. The green risks are either low risk in terms of impact, or they are not very likely to occur. For one reason or the other, the risk number, that value is low. And the red ones are the ones that are either hard to detect or have a high impact or very highly likely to occur. But whatever it is, that they become red zone. So these would require more planning for. This probably I can relax a little bit on. The yellow zone, again, depends on your industry and your project, you have to decide. But this is what we are doing in order to realize where I need to put my energy in. And once you have that, you have to think about development. It's the consequences of it. And in project management, we think about, is there a way I can avoid it? So the example that I gave you, if I go to Arizona, can I avoid rain in October, right? So changing the plan that it would eliminate the risk or condition. But of course, your customer has to agree with that. Mitigating is another one. But mitigating is something you will do to either change the likelihood of an event happening or reducing its impact, okay? So one option is, if I find a month in Illinois that it's less likely to rain, I reduce the likelihood of that event of rain being disruptive to my outdoor event. Or I can reduce the impact of it by having that tent available where people are not getting wet. We are still outdoors, but we are protected from the rain. So mitigation it can go either way. Then of course there is the transference. We buy insurance to protect ourselves so another party will pick up any cost associated with it. So if there's a hurricane and my equipment is destroyed in my construction, insurance will pay for it. Right, so that's a transference. Sometimes when you have a large number of people, subcontractors are working with, they each will take on their own risk ownership. So that's when we share our risk with the others. And sometimes we just retain the risk. The risk is earthquake. There's nothing I can do. I cannot plan for it. I cannot mitigate it. I cannot avoid it. If I'm in a fault area, it's going to happen. So sometimes the risks that are just hard to control, we retain them, meaning that we're not going to change them in any way, but that doesn't mean that we don't know that they can happen. And there are times that they would escalate. There are sometimes risks that happens that is outside of your scope. For example, if I'm coming up with a new product and all of a sudden my competitor has come out with that product, that's a bad thing for my project, but it's not for me to decide what to do. I need to escalate it to a higher level management to decide, okay, we are canceling the project or we are continuing with the project with a new twist on it, right? So that's when you escalate, when you go outside of the scope of the project. So any of these are a response that you can develop for the risk that you identify. And this, again, is not something you do on your own. You need a team of experts, your team members who have expertise, they have knowledge, they have experience to help you come up with the best way to create a response for your risks. And then it comes the risk management plan. So you have the risk response development, and you come up now with a contingency. So what is a contingency? What are you going to do if it were to happen? So like what I said, if I have my tent ready, I have already spoken to the person and they have it on reserve for me. If I need it, they will come and then they will charge me. Great. So that's a contingency plan. So you need to come up with a contingency plan for every risk that you have is in the red zone. And then you wait for the trigger, right? So when I look the day before my wedding and there is storm clouds coming and they're forecasting 100% chance of rain. I know it's coming. Or the union has gone on strike and I know there's going to be a labor shortage. That's a trigger. We have to go to who is going to be responsible for handling this. So when you come up with a risk plan for the red zone, one of the most important things that you need to do is also have your plan. Who is responsible for taking care of that? That contingency plan should be needed. So you want it to be like a 911. If it happens, I don't have to wonder who should I call to handle it for me. Beforehand, we plan for this, that for this risk, Kate is responsible, should we need to go to the contingency plan. So there is least amount of time and money wasted trying to figure out who's responsible. Because if I know all of this, but I haven't made anyone responsible for calling to action and taking care of it, we have wasted time and energy. These are proactive way of dealing with risk. This is what we call risk management. So these steps, simple steps, can save a lot of time, lot of cost, because you're being proactive dealing with risk. You can never get rid of risks for sure. It's never going to be, you can never stop risks from happening. What you can control is how you would react to these risks and how quickly you react to these risks. Project managers who do a good job in this are the ones who set themselves apart because they're more likely to finish on time, on budget, or on scope. Or if they go over budget, they could say to the customer, remember, I told you that if it rains, I have to get you a tent, and that tent costs $500 a day. Well, so the cost of your wedding has just gone up by 500, and this is the reason why. So there is no reason saying that, oh, why did you go over budget? That's not over budget. That's a contingency plan. We had agreed that if that happens, I'm going to need this much more time and this much more money to deal with it. Now the risk has happened, so therefore my budget is this much higher and my time has extended by this much. No one disagrees that this is okay. So the more you have communicated that, because as a project manager, your job is to manage expectations throughout the project's lifetime. If you want to finish strong, you have to manage expectations. So this is one way of managing that. The last thing that I want to share with you guys, and then we can open it up for Q&A, is that you have to understand that the project goes through a life cycle. Okay, you start from defining all the way when you go to deliver the project. At the beginning of a project, the chances of risks happening is very high. Why? Because we're still learning about our project. There's a lot of things that we are just becoming accustomed to. So the chances of risk starts to decrease as we get closer and closer. The number of events that can be disruptive to you decreases. But what will change is the cost. The cost of fixing something up here when my permit is late is a lot less than the small number of events that are happening toward the end. Recovering from these requires a lot more cost to increase. So this is the dilemma that the project manager has. At the beginning, you get to know your project. There are a lot of unknowns that are happening that maybe you didn't think of, maybe you didn't plan for effectively, maybe you thought it was easier to detect, all of that. But the cost of recovery is relatively low. This cost of recovery starts to shoot up as you get more and more into the project. And that's what ends up plaguing many of the projects. So I'm going to stop here. It was just a teaser for you guys to see how you can improve the chances of success in face of uncertainty, which is everywhere in your life. So if you have any questions or any comments or anything you want to ask about our programs, as a faculty member who teaches 2 classes, I don't know how many people teach 2 classes in our program. If there's anything that I can provide you, it would be great. Anyone? Or I just completely blew you away. Lawson, go ahead.
I heard you talking about bad rigs, and I was curious to know, aren't all rigs bad?
No, not all bad risks are bad. Like I said, if let's say there is a huge market, all of a sudden something happens. If I were a company that run tests for COVID, right? Home tests for COVID, all of a sudden there's a huge demand for it after Omicron, right? That's a huge opportunity for me. But if I
Okay.
can't produce them fast enough to sell it, so what? Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we think of risks as bad, but sometimes we have to plan for the good stuff that can happen to us, so we are prepared to take advantage of it. That's what it means. Melba.
Hi there. Can you talk a little bit about the structure of classes? Are they, how often they meet? Are they always as this class was, or are there pieces that are asynchronous? How does that work?
So we do have a big part of it that's asynchronous. I think Kate explained that. And if you want, Kate, you want to explain it, you can, or I can, whatever you prefer. But we have a huge asynchronous part. But then every week, every class will have something similar to the nature of what you saw today, which we call live session, where we go over the highlights. Different people do different things. I'm going to talk about myself. I go over highlights of what you're learning in that 1 week of work. And we will have breakout activities. We will have discussions. And then every week there is some sort of a homework or some kind of assignment, a team assignment, individual assignment. And that's how, and all of our classes are 8 weeks long, right, Kate? And then every 8 weeks, if you get tired of someone, you'll switch it off to someone else. Does that answer your question, Nova?
Yes, thank you. And are they always an hour long?
Our live sessions are actually an hour and a half long.
Okay.
And like for my class, one of my classes is large. So I offer my live session and I have PowerPoints like this. So to keep me on task, I run it 3 different times, but they're pretty much the same. And then they get recorded for those who can't come to any of the sessions because, so we try to accommodate different time zones. So someone like Ryan doesn't have to wake up at 3 a.m. in Singapore to listen. Right. And all of that. So they're usually an hour and a half, and it goes much faster than you think. At least I think so.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Sultan.
Professor, I did want to point out that Nancy has had their hand raised for a while.
Oh, did it? It's not in my screen. I'm very sorry, Nancy. Go ahead.
No problem. All
Thank
right,
you.
go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you, Sultan. No, because I have my hand is dark, you might not see it, but it's there.
Oh, it's bookcase. Okay.
No, mine was just to thank you for this. I've always been curious about project management and I'm always scared of it, but listening to you, I want to learn more. And I'm like, okay, when can I start and be in your class? Just wanted to thank you. You made it seem a project be doable, but just the small steps that I've learned. So just thank you. Thank you for the lecture. I'm excited.
I think it's doable. I think it's a hard thing, but there is a process that is followed. It will help you. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you.
I see your hand now, but it's in your virtual background inside.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Sultan.
Sultan?
Hi, everyone.
Hello. You have a
Hello.
question? Yeah.
Yes. I would like to thank you for this explanation, and since we're gonna take the courses out of the country, I mean like out of the USA, so the classes would be like around what time, and should we like attend all the classes like live, or can we?
So the live sessions, like I said, for one of my classes, it is 3 times a week, and one of them is twice a week. They're exactly the same. So you only need to attend one of the 3 or one of the 2. We try to give it one time in the morning, one time in the evening to accommodate as many live time differences as possible. So for example, and I also have office hours in the same way. So when I have office hours early in the morning, I usually get my students from Asia. Europeans are at the best time zone. They can attend any of the time zones. But US domestic students usually go for the evening because that's after their work, and our international students, especially from Asia, they attend the morning sessions. So you will have options there. And if you cannot, there are recordings of it that you can watch later on. Okay.
Thanks. Sounds good, actually.
It does sound good.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Arjun, are you done with your multitasking and you're ready to ask a question?
Hi, Professor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I do apologize about this, right?
It's okay.
My work is a little bit demanding. Just I'm nonstop everywhere. But yeah, love the fact we talked about risk, right? We deal with risk every day in our lives, right?
Yeah.
I understand you touched risks about like business perspective wise, but something that has been always in the back of my mind is risk affiliated with the stock options.
Well, you have a finance class that would deal with that.
Okay, but I'm saying like we didn't touch on that, and
No,
that's
because this was about managing a project.
okay.
Risk is across the board. I also teach statistics, and I talk about risk there also.
I love statistics.
Oh, good. But you have to understand, risk is everywhere. In every decision that you make, you have to deal with risks, right? Whether it's financial, whether you decide how many gadgets you're going to make, because if the market isn't for it, this was in the context of a managing of a project.
Okay.
So you have plenty of different classes to take, and all of them will touch on different things. When I teach project management class, is to talk about what is the best process to follow, so your project will end up on time, on budget, and on scope. So when you're in finance class, is about how do I manage my money so I can end up at the goal that I set for myself. You understand what I'm saying?
Perfect, Professor. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Greatly appreciate having this opportunity. Super amazing.
That's thanks to the Geese College of Business, not me. On their behalf, I say I appreciate it. Jason.
Roger.
Jason?
Yes, I'm here. Hi. I just had one question. My understanding when I came across the RSVP for this, you also teach statistics. So how prepared or unprepared do you see students in the more quant heavy courses if they don't have necessarily like a strong working experience or academic experience with the quant heavy courses?
So I can only talk about my class, and it's one of the quant classes, but I think I'm not that different. But I want to put that disclaimer up there that this is just my thing. MBAs, by and large, that whenever the MBA degree was invented, long time ago, was invented for anyone with any bachelor's degree. So you could have been a degree in art history, or you could have been a degree in engineering or mathematics, right? So by and large, MBA was always designed for people with a variety of backgrounds, and to bring them up to the skill levels needed for business environment, right? So this is basically the premise of an MBA. That hasn't changed in IMBA either. So when I teach my class, I start at the very low level, and then I build up very quickly. But I think everyone in the class, some people will do better in my class than others, but then there are also the same people that do well in my class might not do as well in the management class because of their background. So it kind of evens out. First of all, let me say that whatever your strengths are as a human being, you might be more of a quant than more of a qualitative person, it would even out. But in my class, I take from the beginning, I start literally talking about average. What does average mean? And take you all the way to regression. And you can look it up. You can go back to University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. There is a list of excellent instructors, and you will see 572 listed every semester that I have taught it. If the students didn't like the class, they wouldn't name it that, right? So I think it speaks to the fact that the majority of the students end up loving that class because they get something out of it, no matter what their initial grounding or background is. Does that answer your question, Jason?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, Pulkit.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Just a quick question for your central time timings for your live classes. Generally, what time is that?
Well, I can only talk about mine. Mine is this semester. Right now, I run it Thursday mornings at 8:30, and then Thursdays at 6 o'clock. So
okay,
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
I'm being asked to wrap it up. I can stay and talk forever, but apparently other people have other things to do. So Kate, I'm going to let you finish off.
Okay. Yes, we will. I'm happy to answer any questions and connect you with the professor if you didn't get your questions answered. But thank you so much, Professor Taghaboni-Dutta. We really appreciate all of your great insights today. I know I learned something today. I hope everyone enjoyed this live class experience, which would be just like, more or less one of the classes that you could experience in our program. So thank you to all of our participants today for attending this mock lecture and really bringing some great questions and comments to the table. We hope you gained some valuable knowledge and you're inspired to maybe submit your application soon. Thomas is going to put our email address and that QR code one more time up on the screen that we shared at the beginning of the hour. If you would like us to reach out to you, you'll just scan that and fill out a short form and we will connect with you. Applications are open right now for the fall term for the IMBA, the IMSA, and the IMSM programs. And the next deadline to apply is May 5th. This is a priority 1 deadline with maximum benefits like no application fee, scholarship consideration, early networking opportunities, things like that. We hope you'll join us for the next iDegree webinars where we can dive into some of these program type questions on April 26th, where we'll share, application tips, differentiate all of the programs, things like that. And then you can also hear from one of our current students as well. You can register for that event on the Geese Online events page. We look forward to seeing you then, and I hope everyone has a great day. And thanks again, Professor.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye-bye.